really important that we begin to change the mindset of young people to know that your vote counts.
They don't understand that the legislative arm of government is actually a co-equal arm of government.
We have an incredible amount of potential.
Whatever it is I was doing, because of my personal DNA, it had to be of an international standard, which is what, seriously speaking, is all about.
Hello there. On the show today, I'm not really very happy for two reasons. I wonder what kind of future our children will have, given the kind of education that they're getting now. What kind of curriculum are we using to teach our children? I belong to a group that's called an Association for Concerned Mothers. Recently, there was a press conference drawing people's attention to the fact that curricula is very important because certain books in our children's educational system are, not a sight for sore eyes, to tell you the truth. So on the show today, fortunately, I have two sets of people who are both advocates and educators that would help us to understand why it's very important for us as parents or as educators of our children to ensure that the right curriculum is adopted in our school that suits national development. Welcome. This is Seriously Speaking, and my name is Adesuwa Onyenokwe. We'll be back in a short while.
This is instructions for the teacher in the classroom to ask her or his students, how do people express their sexual feelings? What is abstinence? And here are some answers. Oral sex, masturbation, anal sex, massage, holding hands, touching each other's genitals, saying, I like you. And what they're doing is equating all these things. Saying, I like you is equal to anal sex.
It is pornography. Men, especially on the House floor, did not want to look at. We couldn't show this on the television news, but yet we want our fourth grade children to be looking at this book.
In the name of sexuality education, children are seeing obscene materials that have been ruled by Congress and by the Supreme Court impossible to show to children.
An online CSE program for African youth called The World Starts With Me tells children that sexuality includes oral sex and masturbation. It then tells them it's their own choice if they want to lose their virginity. It shows children pictures of naked girls and boys in various stages of development, and then asks them to point out differences in their private parts.
That little clip that you saw just before we came back to the studio is to establish the fact of how easily school curriculum can be corrupted. It was a production of the Family Watch International, and I got to know about it through the Foundation for African Cultural Heritage. One of the members is here, and also a concerned father is here. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you today, advocates, I call it, Mr. Ahmed Akambi. It's nice to have you on set.
Thank you so much.
And also Ms. Nkem Agboti. I'm glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Before you start looking like weeping children, you know. But I find it interesting because Mr. Akambi shared his experience at the conference we had, said in March, wasn't it? An international conference about how his daughter walked up to him one day with a literature textbook and he almost passed out when he saw what was inside. Tell us about it, Mr. Akambi.
Well,
where do I start?
Where do I even start from? She came to me and said they were given some textbooks to read, some literature textbooks to read in school. And they were actually asked to summarize those textbooks, but that she doesn't feel comfortable with some parts of those books. I asked her why. She said she believes that the two books contains things she should not be reading. I asked her to bring the books. I went through the books, and when I saw some of the excerpts, I was stunned that how can such books be recommended for GS1 students? Then she was 10 then, okay. But now she's 11. You need to see the contents of this book. Extremely vulgar language, terrible English, very lewd content. And the little girl felt really traumatized. Yes, she was very traumatized because my daughter tends to be sensitive to things like that, really. We held a meeting at home. I asked the mom to go to school, and we made a very strong complaint in school. But the feeble response was that there was nothing they could do about it.
Because it's part of the curriculum.
These were textbooks that were recommended by the Ministry of Education. I felt a bit helpless, but I needed to be able to satisfy my daughter that there must be a remedy in all this, I took it upon myself to write to the Ministry of Education. I actually wrote to the Federal Ministry of Education, copied the FCT Ministry,
because she's in school in Abuja.
Because she's in school in Abuja. Also copied the permanent secretaries of these two ministries. I wrote those letters about 6 months ago, and as I speak, I'm yet to receive any response.
What has all of this got to do with CSC and the concern of the foundation and all of that?
Well, thank you, Adesuwa. What Mr. Akombi has just described fits very well into a comprehensive sexuality education curriculum. Comprehensive sexuality education is that sex education that focuses more on sexual rights than sexual health. There's an emphasis on things like sources of pleasure, validation of different sexual orientations, the need for youth and adolescents to examine their gender identity in spite of their biological sex, the right to safe abortions, and the need for youth and adolescents to have access to condoms and contraceptives as needed.
Comprehensive. Is that bad?
Sorry?
Is that bad?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. As I said, the focus is on sexual rights and not sexual health. They're talking more about, look, whatever feelings you're feeling sexually are fine. And whatever you want to do sexually, go ahead and do, as long as you take risk reduction precautions, not risk avoidance, but risk reduction precautions. You know, it also talks about how children, you know, oh gosh.
So
sorry.
I'm just wondering, if that's the case, how do these things, you know, it means that at the end of the day, they come out in the kind of books that are used in schools?
Yes, and I'll tell you, I'll tell you why. Let me rewind a little bit. When you look at everything that I've described, the irresistible conclusion is that comprehensive sexuality education has as its objective to modify the gender and sexual norms of society. And you might say, why do I say this? Fast forward to 2013, the CSW. CSW stands for the Commission on the Status of Women. It's a United Nations institution. It's intergovernmental. Nigeria is a member.
And we signed it into women.
We subscribe to it. And Nigeria is a member, and the CSW meets every year. And every year, the members report back to each other on how far they've gone in the effort to achieve gender equality in their respective countries.
So CSC is supposed to help people, you know, to cause gender equality?
Supposedly.
That's what they say.
Supposedly. We don't say this, but in 2013, when they had this meeting, one of the conclusions that they came up with was that all member nations need to develop and implement education programs and training material for the comprehensive human sexuality education of youth and adolescents. And the purpose of this is so that the social and cultural patterns of behavior of all men and women in society will be modified for the elimination of prejudice.
So I'll take a break so I can talk to the educators now who will tell me how curriculum is developed in our country. So I'll be right back with my next set of guests in a minute. Welcome back. The advocates have spoken. There's a problem. People are sneaking things into our curriculum. They've advocated, why don't we have our own curriculum? So I've brought an expert into the house who understands curricula after spending more than 2 decades in the industry. And it just happens that the person is a relative. So I'll leave you to guess what kind of relative this is by the time you look at the face. And she's going to be on set this time with another advocate in the non-governmental sector. And he's been here before, so he's not a guest, really. So I'd like to introduce Mrs. Thomas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adesuwa.
And then this is Kingsley Egwebulem.
Obom.
You liked the Obom before. Okay, that's fine. And is a publisher of Parenting Now. Mrs. Thomas is the founder of Brook House. I mean, I'm sure it's years in the industry has made her decide I want to have my own that is formed and guided by the principles I believe in. But when you talk curricula, you're one of the first things people call Mrs. Thomas. I couldn't but invite you. But you know, Mr. Akombi said something, which is the fact that we need to develop our own local curriculum. Tell me how Curricula is developed in Nigeria.
Well, let me tell you how Curricula is developed. Curricula is a combination of what we want to achieve as a nation, how do we deliver it, and how do we assess whether we are achieving what we have set out to deliver. So it's just the what, the how, the where, you know, of what it is that we want our children to learn. And I agree with what Mr. Akande said, that Curricula is supposed to be a cultural thing. It's not, there are the aspects of it that are global, that are universal, but by and large, curriculum is actually what a nation desires as its goals to achieve with its children. So that's what curriculum is really about.
So, but before I go to Mr. Kingsley, I also need to know this issue of the curriculum on CSC. I don't know if you're aware of it and ever happened. Okay. So how did you manage it? Because you run a great school for a long time before you set up your school.
You see, because when I saw it, I was appalled and shocked by the content of what UNESCO has come up with. And I believe that it must have their reasons. But like I've always said, a nation should determine what its children, you know, should be taught. So, because it's about the nation. It's about the development of the nation. So you don't just take things hook, line, and sinker. What do we want to achieve as a goal? What are our goals as a nation? And so those are the things that we should be looking at. So this particular sexuality education thing is too gory, it's too detailed as far as I'm concerned. But we should be encouraging our children to take care of themselves as far as health is concerned, not to have the right to do what they want to do with their body or the kind of things that are expressed
negative,
in the...
Yes, and I find that as a good position to bring in Mr. Kingsley, because you're a father, you know, you have a daughter as your first child, so you're concerned. But you also try to raise boys, because you do a lot of work around helping young men to understand what is right and what is wrong. Now, in parenting now, how is it a parent problem to understand what curriculum should be?
Well, you know, a child that is not educated at home is not totally educated. So when the school teaches and the home teaches a child, the child is wrong.
Mr. Akombi, we'll keep calling it Akonde. It's Akombi.
Akombi. Yes, yeah. If you listen to his story, he did his job, which is that of evaluating and scrutinizing what your child is learning. Now, every parent should take a cue from that. You need to be involved, and when you are involved, apart from trying to help the child learn better, you're able to spot some of these, you know, should I say flashpoints? Having said that, we have a big problem here, and which both the parents and the school system need to, you know, be concerned about. And that is when you copy stuff. You know, when you copy and paste,
you're going to have a problem.
Both the error and the good stuff.
I must take a break so we can all sit down and proffer solutions, which is what you're talking about stakeholders, you're talking about parents being involved in school. How do we address this problem? But the truth is, we want our educational system to be teaching only those things that will develop our nation. We'll be right back. So it doesn't seem like we're speaking over your heads. This time on the panel, as always, for us to proffer solutions. And I will start straight from the parent side, because, I mean, he's on my side, you know, Mr. Akombi. You've heard all they've said. You know, the curriculum has to be this way, that way. What are the solutions that you think will make it work? For example, your school didn't listen to you. You're the one writing to ministry.
For me, the first thing is that we must ensure that our children have regular access to us. They must have regular access to us so that when they have issues of concern, it becomes very easy for them to raise these issues.
I want to come to address this question again. You know, parents are involved, everything is happening. We've talked about books that they didn't like, literature books. What has this got to do with sex education? How do we know that what's the relationship with CSE?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I spoke earlier about the CSW conclusion of 2013, and what the conclusion also said is that in developing these educational programs, that nations must do this curriculum development hand in hand with CSOs, non-governmental
society
organizations, non-governmental organizations. So you have the UN saying, develop this curricula with non-governmental organizations. And which is the non-governmental organization that works the most with the UN on education? It's International Planned Parenthood Federation.
Oh, wow.
International Planned Parenthood Federation has a curriculum called It's All One, which they presented to African ambassadors at the UN. It is something that they want to implement in Africa. Fast forward to 2016, you have the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill. Section 5 of the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill says that basically adopts the conclusion of the CSW, which is basically that every institution in Nigeria, if you look at the wording, it boils down to every institution in Nigeria, but then there's emphasis on educational institutions.
So it means we should expose our kids to all this education because...
in order to modify the cultural and social patterns of behavior. This is in a proposed legislation
is shaking her head.
Of Nigeria.
So we must say no to that.
How do you come up with a program that you want to educate our children on, and you don't get educators involved? And you're talking about, organizations like the CSO or the educators are the ones going to pass this on to the children.
We must blame the educators then. It's either the educators are being bribed.
Not wholly. Not wholly, because if you get the educators involved, if you consider them important or relevant in the scheme of things, you would get them involved. You should get a balanced view.
That's it.
But Mrs. Thomas, you also know that the educators, are they that trained? That was one of your concerns.
Trained to deliver the correct... What is that? Telling our children the kind of thing...
The content.
Yes, it's not the content.
The delivery.
The content, even the content, educators must be involved in the content.
As a Nigerian factor.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. We'll see you again, same time, same station next week. Bye.